Hello there. I'm getting ready to work on my sermon for this coming Sunday, so I was doing some preliminary reading, kind of brainstorming for myself about what are some of the connections in the readings that I would like to go with as I preach. So, this is a Sunday that we have a lot of interesting texts, really short reading from Proverbs 25. Do not put yourself forward in the king's presence or stand in the place of the great, for it is better to be told, come up here, than to be put lower in the presence of a noble. So a lesson of humility there. Then the second reading is from Hebrews 13, and I found some verses that are kind of supporting some of the thoughts that are coming to my mind. Let mutual love continue. Show hospitality to strangers. Remember those who are in prison. Let marriage be held in honor. Keep your lives free from the love of money. Remember your leaders. And then it all seems to come together in Luke chapter 14, where Jesus tells the story and then makes a conclusion. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. When you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. So what comes to mind today in these readings to me is kind of a common theme of humility and the need for humility. And as I was thinking about that, I remembered something that happened when I was in 7th grade. Right now, my daughter is taking physics in her junior year, so we were talking about at the beginning of her year how, what physics is all about. And I remembered I was one of those kids, grew up in Europe, and I had 4 years of physics, so 7th, 8th, my freshman and sophomore year. And so I remember at first physics didn't come easily to me. Otherwise, I was a really, really good student, could grapple with everything. But I failed my first physics test in 7th grade. And it was a wonderful teacher. And I remember how humiliating it was for me, an A student, to get an F on that test. So much so that for some strange reason, don't ask me why, I decided to keep that test. We were able to keep some of those tests after the school year was over. And I kept it to this very day. Here and there, when I find it, I look at it and think about what it felt like on that day when I got the grade and I failed. Kind of kept me really humble the rest of my time in school, to know that no one is invincible. As smart as you think you are, as well as you might be learning, there are times when we all stumble and fall, and we're humiliated. So it's good to live our lives with that perspective, that nothing is forever, and that we need to be humble before our God, because we never know how our circumstances will turn out in life. So humble thyself, that song is probably going to be sung in many of our churches. Humble thyself is a common theme in our readings, and it reaches also into the domain of hospitality as much as I see. This is a story of a meal and how we sit during a meal, how we seek places of honor. Interestingly enough, it is interesting for me as a European person to compare hospitality in the United States and hospitality as I have known it in other parts of the world. And I noticed that in other parts of the world that I frequented, Hospitality is a huge thing. If somebody comes to your home, you put out the best. We pull out the Turkish coffee, we dig through all the recesses of our home and find the best juices, the best wine, the best aperitif, the best meal that we can produce, even if it's a guest that comes on short notice or just shows up on your doorstep. It's a great honor to have a guest, and you put everything in front of them that you possibly can and make sure that you give them time. You spend time with your guest. You don't run off and say, I'm sorry, I don't have time now. As opposed to that, I noticed a little less of a hospitality atmosphere in the United States as I'm visiting people, as I enter their homes. We're lucky sometimes if we get offered a glass of water, maybe a soda, but it's usually not an elaborate meal that you would get in other parts of the world. So that made me think about the question of humility. How do we see those who come to us as guests? Christ ultimately is that guest that comes into our lives and shows up in many different places, and we often don't recognize him. Often he shows up with a different face. And I think we all know that everyone would like to be seen in our life, that everyone enjoys that kind of basic respect and honor to be seen for who they are. The question comes to me in this question and kind of quest of humility: am I seeing others? Am I seeing those who are around me? What kind of hospitality am I showing them? Am I honoring them with how I live beside them, in how I interact with them to the best of my ability, knowing that this person could be the Lord Jesus Christ himself? I like a prayer that was printed on one of these old today's lessons. This is no longer the one that we use in our churches that use the ELW, but this prayer in the middle said, humble us by his, meaning Jesus' example, point us to the path of obedience and give us strength to follow his commands. So ultimately, we want to keep in mind the humility of Jesus Christ and what he has done in his life to show and give us honor and respect. And how can we follow that example of humility in our lifetime? How can we, obedient to sometimes difficult points on our journey when we are called to put ourselves at risk by seeing someone, by welcoming someone, how can we be obedient to Christ when maybe the world does not approve of our choice? And then ultimately, I think this will be a Sunday when we ask God to give us the strength to follow his commands and to live a life of true humility. I wish you all the best. May you have a meaningful worship life in your congregations. Send you my best wishes and blessings. Take care. Bye-bye.